Havok with Conformicide. This album has been one that was a bit really preemptively discussed, not to mention also it was highly anticipated by those who were not only fans of the band, fans of thrash metal, and those that felt that this had the potential to really be something great. Havok has been a group that has been able to deliver albums that have felt like they were right on the cusp of really that sort of instant classic certification. Ones that were really one step away from placing Havok as sort of one of the leaders of the new school of thrash metal. And then after seeing the success of a group such as Vector last year, Havok, of course, comes back with this album, and really the aim and the hope was that they somehow stepped it up. Now, one thing about Havok is that their thrash metal has a little bit more purity to it. So this is one that certainly showcases that, and it's also one that has sort of that backbone within politics and that political rage, that thrash metal anger that seemed to really be a real paramount feature on some albums by bands of old. Either that or something that we recently saw only in tiny amounts, whereas other members of the genre or subgenre, depending on your thoughts on that matter, really aim to explore elsewhere, the anger seeming to become a little bit more distant or placed in other avenues. This is an album that certainly showcases anger. It showcases dissent. It showcases a lot of hate. And it's one that is able to do so while also maintaining a strong sense of songwriting, and that's one of its big-time strengths. You can tell about the anger immediately whenever FPC, the very first cut, the 5.5-minute introduction to this disc really takes full force. And this is one where, with a lot of the songs on the first half of this album, you're going to hear an opening that is a little bit softer, a little bit more thick on the bass. It's one that seems to open things up with a little bit of funk, either that or a little bit of a sort of a pretest tone that doesn't have the same element as the final product, but it instead builds very nicely. This is an album that builds. The building blocks that are present are all there to really help and aid it along. And FPC rather, of course being PC, certainly is able to deliver. Hang 'em High, though, is just a brilliant, brilliant follow-up. This is one that actually takes all of the elements of FPC and really constricts it a little bit more to 4 minutes and 46 seconds, but also is able to add just blistering solos and just tremendous vocals that just seem like they're very in your face. Everything about this album feels tremendously real, and that's why it sort of has that twinge that other Havok albums have had. And so it immediately strikes you the same way as some previous albums where it's right there on the cusp. But then you get the songs such as Dogmaniacal. Either that or you get into Intention to Deceive, and you're noticing that with each passing song, you're noticing that this isn't you jumping around to favorite tracks. It's instead one after the other. It seems like they are stepping up their game and going one step further every single time, until you get to a song such as Ingsoc, until you get to songs like on the second half with Circling the Drain. These are tracks that are going 6 to 7 to nearly 8 minutes, and they're able to deliver the same snarl, the same rage, very similar to what you heard with an album such as The Grinding Wheel by Overkill, only the focus on this is ridiculous, and the anger on this is also a force to be reckoned with. There is a word that has described one of my favorite albums of all time, which is Rust in Peace by Megadeth. It is a riff fest. It is a literal tornado of riffs. It is perfect from inception to conclusion. This is an album that almost feels like, and that's in Conformicide by Havok, that it has followed that blueprint and has followed that focus, basically studied at the altar of Rust in Peace, but was able to deliver a blend of both really riffs as well as very strong songwriting. The construction of process for these tracks feels like it was very well done. This is a long gap between albums for Havok, and it certainly has served them well, as they have been able to really lay the blueprint perhaps for the thrash metal album of the next generation. Now, is this one that is going to be whispered within the same tongues as Rust in Peace? I don't think so. I don't think we're quite at those heights. We're not dizzying around the sun. We're not Daedalus or Icarus. We're instead really looking at this album as instead a blueprint of perhaps the anger that is felt here in 2017. This is a snapshot album for an age, and it's one that is able to execute it extremely nice. And Peace is in Pieces being a real great exhibition of that, considering this is a feeling that is ever present. If you go on social media, if you watch the news, if you go anywhere, and where really you're being encountered with folks that are sort of silent voices, either that or those that are showcasing their voices very actively out in the streets, Peace is in Pieces feels like the perfect carrying call for what 2017 is all about. And it's done with this thrash metal rage, this sort of raucous, absolutely absurd speed intermixed and interwoven with this just callousness that has everybody sort of looking at it and admiring it and realizing, damn, this is a metaphor for today. And that's what this album could easily be seen as. That's why this album perhaps has that instant classic notion to it, that instant classic philosophy behind it, why it could be really considered as such, because not only is it an album that feels very strong on a musical side, not only is it an album that has all of the elements musically, constructively, and just the way in which it's packaged together, the flow of the album, the production, it all feels very tight and very well executed, but it's also a snapshot album of this time, and that just gives it another dimension. And that extra dimension, that extra oomph is what really helps it out. That's what gives it that extra real push, that kick in the ass that really takes it from potentially being the instant classics that previous Havok albums maybe have been on the cusp of doing to actually being an instant classic. One that will be remembered not only in 2017, but one that will be remembered beyond. One that will be remembered whenever thrash metal enters into its 4th, 5th, and 6th decades as a real reminder as to what thrash metal could potentially be and what thrash metal is all about. That is the power of Conformicide by Havok. And the cool part about it is that they even allow themselves to be silly. With track 11, String Break, it's only 43 seconds. It's not really meant to be anything all that serious. And then Slaughtered is one that feels like it has a little bit more of a traditional Havok feel to it. This is not one that completely feels like it's just directing its assault toward the politics of America here in 2017. It's still one that is able to have a little bit of fun. It's one that still showcases their identity. They're still human beings. Just wow. This is an album. This is the album that you want. This is the album that you want. This is the album that you hope that perhaps Gods of Violence would be by Creator, but it was following up such a untouchable album that came before it, that it wasn't able to do it. This is maybe what you wanted the Grinding Wheel by Overkill to be, but Overkill, of course, as a legend, just perhaps can't deliver the same amount of oomph that Havok was able to deliver. This is essentially Havok's version of an album such as Taking Over, either that or even The Years to Decay, one that is not necessarily transitional but feels very big. It feels like it has that epic feel. It's something larger than they've done previously. This is a 29 out of 30. This is essential listening. This is essential, need to know, need to have, need to experience listening. I recommend that you do this almost instantaneously. There's not much more that I can say about this album because the praise that I can deliver will really illuminate the same elements that I've already discussed in the past 6 or 7 minutes, and that's all you need to know. That's all that makes a brilliant thrash album. And topicality certainly gives it that extra dimension that thrash it sometimes sorely needs. I want to know what you guys think about Conformicide by Havok. Let me know in the comments below. I'm coverkillernation. It's been a while. If you like what you saw, please subscribe to the channel. Consider leaving a donation. Everything really helps out. I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.